water back into the ground to replace the oil. So that's when people say, oh, it's really human activity that's causing this. It's not a coincidence.
The earthquakes are a byproduct of a process called hydrofracture to extract oil and gas. The pressurized fluid opens up the oil and gas-rich rocks, pushing them apart. And as the rocks move, energy is released, generating small earthquakes. Even filling up a reservoir behind a dam too quickly can cause earthquakes, and occasionally to deadly effect.
In putting water behind dams, you cause a greater loading on the earth. And if there happens to be some faults there, pre-existing faults, then you can cause larger earthquakes. For example, in India, at Koyana Dam, there was over a magnitude 6 earthquake that killed over 200 people.
That was in 1967. More recently, some suspect that a dam built in Sichuan, China may have hastened the arrival of a 7.9 earthquake that killed tens of thousands in 2008.
If you happen to go to an active fault, that active fault will naturally produce large earthquakes, and if you perturb it at the right time and in the right place, you might trigger that natural earthquake sooner rather than later.
Affected by earthquake-induced seismic waves. All buildings have a natural period, or resonance, which is a number of seconds it takes for the building to naturally vibrate back and forth. The ground also has a specific resonant frequency. Hard bedrock has higher frequencies than softer sediments. If the period of ground motion matches the natural resonance of a building, it will undergo the largest oscillations possible and suffer the greatest damage. Small buildings of 1 or 2 stories resonate naturally at much less than 1 second periods, as 1 second period will affect buildings of about 10 stories. For example, a 30-story building resonates at a period of 3 seconds, and a 50-story building resonates at a period of 5 seconds. During the 1985 Mexico City earthquake, the ground beneath the city resonated with a 2-second period for over a minute. Thus, medium-height buildings with similar natural periods suffered the most damage, while short, old, weak stone buildings and skyscrapers were relatively undamaged. That proved to be what is called a resonance disaster, which is how engineers describe the destruction of a building by seismic vibrations at a system's resonant frequency. It is because of prolonged energy input that the system swings more and more strongly until a structural load limit is exceeded. A key point here is that small buildings on hard rock and large buildings on soft sediments may suffer more damage and ground motion effects from an earthquake than small buildings on soft sediments and large buildings on hard rock. Resonance is one factor that contributes to earthquake damage. Of equal or greater importance are building design and the quality of construction materials. By determining the resonant frequency of the ground beneath the building site, the building design can be modified so that a resonance disaster does not occur. The following demonstration shows how to model resonance in the classroom.
The idea of the BOSS model is that different height buildings will respond to different frequencies of horizontal ground motion. A tall building will respond to very slow or low frequency oscillations of the ground. So if I move the base slowly back and forth, I can get the tall building to oscillate, where the intermediate and short buildings are not moving. If I move it more briskly, I can dial in the rate of horizontal oscillation so that I move the center building, the intermediate height building, and the short and the tall ones are barely moving. To get the short building to oscillate, you need to move the base very briskly back and forth and dial in to the natural frequency of the short building, and we can see that the intermediate and tall buildings are barely moving.
1983, I did radiotomography with 30 watts, looking for oil in the ground. I found 26 oil wells over a 9-state area, and 100% of the time was accurate with just 30 watts of power beaming straight into solid rock. HARP uses 1 billion watts beamed straight into the ionosphere for experiments. Picture these strings on the piano as layers of the earth. Each one has its own frequency. What we used to do is beam radio waves into the ground, and it would vibrate any strings that were present in the ground. We might get a sound back like, and we'd say, that's natural gas. we might get a sound back like, and we say that's crude oil. We were able to identify each frequency. We accomplished this with just 30 watts of radio power. If you do this with 2 billion watts, the vibrations are so violent that the entire piano would shake. In fact, the whole house would shake. In fact, the vibrations could be so severe underground that could even cause an earthquake.
Dr. Agnew experienced the power of ELF waves firsthand back in the 1980s. He was hired by an energy company to locate oil and gas using the same kind of ELF waves at much lower frequencies to carry out his search. It's a process called earth tomography. But during one particular incident, Dr. Agnew believes his use of HAARP-like ELF waves accidentally triggered an earthquake.
It was in the spring of 1987 we arrived in Roseburg, Oregon to use our ELF technology to search for oil and gas. Setting up that day, we had a little bit different results than we expected because the instant that we energized it, there was between a 4 and 4.5 on the Richter scale earthquake that occurred. We were so amazed about what seemed to be cause and effect. We get to an area that has a high propensity for earthquakes in an area known as the megathrust of the Pacific Northwest. We turn it on and an earthquake occurs.
Dr. Agnew demonstrates how he may have triggered the quake.
This is a scale model of what the area looked like in Oregon when we scanned for oil and gas in 1987. The strata right here represents the megathrust area underneath the ground. The rock represents the potential energy set up in the ground from a tectonic stress. What we're going to do is introduce ELF waves and demonstrate that it can in fact trigger an earthquake.
In this case, Dr. Agnew is using a stereo speaker to produce the ELF waves needed for his demonstration.
ELF waves, extremely low frequency waves, are just like a subwoofer. In your car, you can actually feel the vibrations through your body. ELF waves are the same way. They vibrate the earth, and at right resonant frequencies, they can have devastating effects.
When the speaker is activated, ELF waves begin to emit. Tiny vibrations in the sand are detected. Then a few seconds later, the rock representing a fault line shifts.
As you can see, in a very few seconds, the resonant frequency built up in our model released the potential energy in the rock. That concussion, on a real scale, would have been felt for 100 miles. These conditions are already set up in the ground. All it takes is the activation energy to make the release happen. This is a small scale, and we're only using 30 watts in this scale.
When HAARP's broadcast array in Gakona, Alaska sends pulses of ELF waves into the ionosphere, the waves get reflected back down and pass through the Earth and ocean. If 3.6 million watts of ELF waves were purposely or accidentally aimed at an already unstable fault line, it could, according to Dr. Agnew, cause a tremendous earthquake.
Looking at just simple instabilities, what does it take to create an avalanche? A guy walking across an unstable ice field. What does it take to trigger an earthquake? The right signal coming in when the pressures are already built up and they're at their threshold. That feather, and in our case that hammer, releases that energy.
Following those twin earthquakes in Venezuela, at least 1,400 are dead and thousands more are injured. Marcus Moore has the latest for us this morning. Good morning, Marcus.
Rhiannon, good morning. U.S. search and rescue teams are now on the ground, their work expanding overnight. The rescue effort is now in its 4th day, and U.S. teams sharing this video of them rescuing a mother and her young son, pulling them from the rubble of one of those collapsed buildings, and people who watched this rescue cheering in relief. Now, despite the destruction, the mother and her child only had minor injuries. The search team writing on X, against all odds, hope endures. Now, when you look at drone footage, you can see the widespread destruction in and around Caracas. The death toll, as you noted, has climbed past 1,400 people, more than 3,000 injured, and some 55,000 unaccounted for, according to a UN official. The U.S. Southern Command has brought in military aircraft, a C-17 and Chinook helicopters to aid in the operation, and rescuers right now are in those critical hours to find as many survivors as they can. And just a quick number we just learned this weekend, researchers at Oregon State University estimate that nearly 60,000 buildings were damaged or destroyed by these back-to-back earthquakes. Gio.
60,000 buildings, at least 1,400 dead. The numbers are unimaginable. Marcus, thank you so much.